Welcome back to Counseling Tips for Pastors and Ministry Leaders. My name is Jess Hayes, and I work at I Hope Christian Care and Counseling, a small nonprofit Christian counseling center in South Carolina. I'm a licensed counselor in the state, and this podcast is an effort of I Hope with the goal of equipping pastors and leaders, people who are in ministry, with the different counseling related mental health, relational needs that ministry requires, and to offer encouragement because we know that you are doing hard but holy work. So if you'd like to learn more about iHope, I would encourage you to head to ihopeflorence.com. All of our episodes are there as a blog, and you can learn more about our services, both in person and virtually throughout South Carolina, and even consider making a donation because we are a 501c3 and we welcome your financial partnership to help cover costs of things like running a podcast, but also help us keep our client fees low. So all of that is at ihopeflorence.com. And today, we're probably going to walk that line a little bit equipping, but hopefully a lot of encouraging in the ministry work that you are doing, because we're going to talk about how to keep a positive attitude when people are complaining. And I particularly mean people are complaining about you or your ministry or your decisions, something that is probably a little bit more personal than just someone complaining about this thing that happened way over there. There is a cliche, at least here in the States, that the only certain things in life are taxes and death. But I think if you are in a leadership position, even in Christian circles, we could add another certainty to the list that you can always expect complaints. You can't please everyone. Human beings, some of us are more optimistic and more positive, but people struggle sometimes to share the good, and we are very quick to share the bad. And that can be painful. That can be personally painful. That can be professionally difficult. And it can really impact a ministry if we are letting complaints continue, but also if we're letting complaints get us down. So I want to share 9 tips today for how might you be able to keep that positive attitude even when people are complaining. Now, the first thing I want to highlight here is give it to Jesus. Give the complaint to Jesus, but more importantly than that, give your attitude, give your emotions, give your own perspective to Jesus. Especially in the Psalms, we see some wonderful examples of this, of David dealing with people. They're doing more than complaining. They're trying to kill him. They're trying to trick him. He's on the run. He's hiding in caves. And he's acknowledging all of the messy emotions that come with that. And he's giving it to Jesus. He's focusing on God's goodness, God's faithfulness. He's crying out to him and asking for mercy, asking God to listen. So when you are faced with people complaining to you, complaining about you, give it to the Lord. And if you need help with that, flip through the Psalms. Find one that connects with you or with your situation, with your emotional situation, and give it to Jesus. Now, my second tip here is don't waste your energy. And I don't mean that you should never engage with someone who has a complaint, because it's often very appropriate, especially if you're in a leadership role, to receive feedback from people. But if you're taking a lot of time and energy defending yourself, justifying what you did, why you did it, repeatedly explaining what's going on, or you're continuing in that dead-end conversation with someone, it's not helpful for you, and it's not helpful for them. It is not honoring to the Lord to let them just complain and complain and grumble, and it's not helpful to your own emotional state to listen to them complain and complain and grumble and grumble. So my apologies if you're watching the video that I speak with my hands and bumped the computer. This is real life. I'm not going to take the time to edit that. We're all going to laugh at me. It's fine. We can move on. So, anyway, yes, don't waste your energy. Receive that feedback and then move on. You don't need to do time and time and time and hours defending and justifying and just trying to make them feel better. Don't waste your energy. Take the feedback and move on. Number 3 here, remind yourself why you made the decision that you made or you're acting the way that you are. The thing that they are complaining about, it's possible they're complaining, and when you reflect on it, you might realize, oh, actually I did make a mistake, or I didn't consider that perspective. Maybe I should have done this differently. And you can apologize. You can have humility in that. But many times people are complaining about things that actually you did think it through. It was a good decision. There's maybe more information than they are aware of, or just it's a preference and they're complaining about it. So remind yourself why. Why did I make this decision? Why did I take action in this way? You can stand firm on that why. And if you realize, oh, actually I should have done it differently, well, you can apologize. You can move on in that direction. 4th tip here for keeping a positive attitude, even when people are complaining, is to spend more time with people who are not complaining, people who love you, who support you, who encourage you. Now, I think in leadership, I do want to note, we don't want to spend all of our time only with people who already think the same way we think, believe what we believe, they support everything we do. We don't want to surround ourselves with what's sometimes called yes men. If someone's going to say yes to everything you think, everything you decide, they're never going to offer a different opinion, they're never going to challenge you. That might be encouraging once in a while, but that's not ultimately going to be great for leadership, because you're going to get stuck in some group think. You're going to get stuck in a rut. You're going to make some bad decisions that could have been avoided if you've surrounded yourself with supportive and encouraging people. So I don't mean that you should never engage with someone who has a different perspective, but absolutely don't spend all your time with people who are complaining and pushing back. If you're getting a lot of complaints, if you're in a hard season of ministry, increase the time you are spending with people who are supportive and encouraging. That might be a spouse, that might be your pastor, that might be a good friend, it might be a colleague. Find those people and be intentional to spend time with them. All right, let me look at my numbers. Tip number 5, walk away from negative conversations. And I hope this goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. Because as a counselor, I have definitely seen people do things that I thought were probably common sense. I don't mean walk away from the negative conversation by just rolling your eyes or throwing up your hand, turning around and walking away. That is not mature, that is not Christ-like, and it is definitely not pastoral. I mean, walk away from the negative conversation in a mature way, but you don't have to just stay there. It might be uncomfortable to set that boundary, but if someone is just complaining and they're pushing and they're negative, staying in that conversation, as I said before, you're wasting your energy. So I want to give a few practical language ideas, wording ideas for how you might walk away. So my first tip here, as you're walking away from the negative conversation, it might help to have a stock phrase that you can use. An example would be, I appreciate your feedback, and I'm going to need some time to think about this. I'm going to go take care of a few other things now, and I'll be praying about this. And then you walk away. And you can say that all the time. Someone's complaining about your sermon. I appreciate your feedback. I'm going to need some time to think about this. I'm going to go take care of a few emails. I'm going to be praying about this. Thank you for your feedback. And you walk away. And then 4 days later, when they complain about, why'd you have coffee with that guy and not with me? It seems like you don't value me. At some point in that conversation, you might need to walk away, and you could say, I appreciate your feedback. I'm going to need some time to think on this. I'm going to go take care of a few other things, and I'll be praying about this. People aren't probably even going to notice that you're saying the same thing to different people in different situations. And if you can feel confident about, I've memorized this little sentence. It's awkward. There's conflict. I want to please people, but I cannot stay in this negative conversation. Pull out that stock phrase and then walk away. But there is a second scenario here I want to give you some wording for. You might need to walk away from a negative conversation. It can help sometimes to take ownership of your reaction. You don't need to blame their negativity or point out, hey man, you're kind of complaining a lot. You can just take ownership of the fact that you need to leave the conversation. So a wording idea there might be, thank you for chatting with me. I think I need to take a little break from this conversation so I can process everything you're sharing. And then guess what? You walk away. So, something like, thank you for chatting with me. I need some time to process this. This is a lot. I appreciate you sharing it. I'm going to be processing it. And then you leave. And yes, you can keep processing it, but you don't need to stay in an ongoing negative, complaining, grumbling conversation. And let's just be honest, there might be a worst case scenario. Someone might be yelling at you. They might be cursing at you. They might be calling you bad names. It's okay in those type of situations to say something like, I am not comfortable with the language you're using. Or you might need to say, it is not appropriate to speak with me that way. I'm going to need to excuse myself. And then you walk away. So those are just a few ideas there. But if you want to keep that positive attitude and do the right thing in that moment, listening to them go on and on and on with complaints is probably not actually helpful. Number 6 here, our 9 tips. We're on number 6 is do not engage complaints through technology. When I write the blog post for this episode, I'll probably make that bold and italicized and underlined because it's so quick and easy to type off that text message and hit send, to type out that comment on social media. But there are so many important pieces of communication that we miss through technology. Number one, sometimes it's too fast, and so we're speaking ahead of what we're thinking, and we might say something that we later regret. But also, you're missing all the nonverbals. You're missing the tone of voice. You're missing the eye contact and the body language. And certainly I would say don't complain through technology either. That should be a face-to-face conversation to offer feedback or constructive criticism. But you can't control how they're complaining. And if you're seeing those complaints, don't engage through technology. You will feel better about your response if it's a phone call, if it's a face-to-face in-the-moment conversation. Again, you might need to walk away from some of those conversations if they're really unhealthy, but don't feel like you have to respond to every complaint, and definitely don't do it through technology. Tip number 7 here, keep open lines of communication with your leadership team. So this podcast is for pastors, for leaders, for those in ministry. You're going to want to talk to your elder board or the other pastors on your team. You want to share the good, but you also need to share the bad. If someone is complaining, especially if it's a repetitive complaint, especially maybe if you're feeling frustrated or hurt or angry about it, you don't want to be holding that all yourself. You want to share this with your leadership team. You don't want secrets, you don't want gossip, but you also don't want to pretend that you're okay. You've got a positive attitude when really you're struggling. You need that support and you need that open communication. Tip number 8, notice what you think you are doing right and lean into that. I don't know who you are. I don't know your strengths. I don't know your struggles, but I'm confident that you have both. I know that I have both. Every human being has strengths and talents and things that are going well and areas for improvement. And when people are complaining, sometimes we start thinking more about the struggles, the weaknesses, the things we need to improve. So make sure that you are noticing what your strengths are. What are you doing right? And lean into that. And then my final tip here is to take a break to care for yourself when you feel hurt or upset about complaints. Don't brush it under the rug. Don't think you have to grin and bear it. Don't think the weight of the world needs to rest on your shoulders because you're the pastor of a mega church or a tiny church or anywhere in between. You are a human being. You're created by God with a good plan and a good purpose. You are loved. You are valuable. And when people are complaining, it makes sense that it's going to hurt our feelings. Even if we wind up agreeing with them and realizing, oh, actually, yeah, I didn't think about that. I made a mistake. We have to humble ourselves, maybe apologize, change our decision. It hurts when people are upset with us, when people complain about us. And especially if that's happening a lot, you need to take some breaks and care for yourself. So that might be little, like in the moment, in a hard meeting or a hard conversation. Take a few slow, deep breaths. Excuse yourself to go to the bathroom. Take a few minutes for yourself to pray, to calm down, to do that deep breathing, to de-escalate that anger. You might cancel a meeting later that afternoon so that you can just get out of the building, go get a coffee, calm down, gather your thoughts. It might be a little break, it might be a vacation, it might be a bigger break, but don't just push and push and push and ignore those emotions. If you're feeling hurt, if you're feeling upset, the best way to keep a positive attitude is to take that break and let yourself process and heal and move forward. So let me recap these 9 tips to help you keep that positive attitude even when people are complaining. Give it to Jesus. Don't waste your energy defending and justifying. Don't waste your energy. Remind yourself why you made the decision or did the thing that you did. Surround yourself with and spend time with people who support and encourage you. Walk away from a long negative conversation. Have a phrase you can use, have a way of responding. You could tell them, obviously you want to tell them, I'm going to leave now, but you don't have to just stand there and take it. Don't engage in complaints through technology. Make sure you're keeping open lines of communication with your leadership team, your elder board, whoever that might be. Number 8, notice what you are doing right, what your strengths are, and lean into that. And number 9, take a break to care for yourself when you're feeling hurt or upset. So I hope, friends, that 1 or 2 of these tips might be helpful for you. And with all of that in mind, again, I would encourage you to head to ihopeflorence.com, check out the blog version of this podcast, grab some of our resources there, or learn more about our services. If you're here in South Carolina, we offer a ministry discount to those who are in full-time ministry. We meet virtually, we meet in person. We would love to hear from you and support you. So just head to ihopeflorence.com. We would love to partner with you, encourage you, whether that's professionally as a client, whether that's encouraging your church, planning a training or something that might be helpful for you or your staff. We would love to continue to support you. And whatever people are complaining about, pray about it. Give it to Jesus. He does not expect you to carry the weight of the world. We can consider what he says in Matthew about when we're weary, when we're burdened, we come to him. He is our rest. He is the one we lean on. So God bless you in the ministry and the work that you are doing. And make sure to circle back with us next week for another episode of Counseling Tips for Pastors and Ministry Leaders.